Okay, today we are going to conduct the day school 3, and in this session we are going to cover two sections. So these are the last two sections we have in this power electronic subjects. I'm going to give you the basic idea on this, then you guys can have that push and read the material you have and understand what's going on. Okay, so actually these things are you guys will need a little bit of push to understand these things. That's why some of you find this power electronic subject a little bit hard, but after giving a little bit of push, you will be able to catch up. Okay, so two sections we are going to cover today. First, we are going to cover the AC to AC converters, and then we are going to cover DC to AC converters. And I will start from AC to AC converters. Before going into the AC to AC conversion theory, we need to keep few things in our mind. I'm telling you this because I know some of you are from industry and you guys will get confused with this AC to AC conversions because of the VFDs and other things you have in your industry environment. So when it comes to AC to AC conversions, there are two major types. The first one, what it does is it directly convert your AC voltages of power supply into another AC source, AC supply. So this is the first one. So it directly converts AC directly into AC. And then it comes to the second type. It uses in between DC bus. So you know VFDs. So VFDs, I think you have seen them in the industry. What we do is we give AC supply and coming out is also AC. What comes out is also AC. But in the inside, what happens is first this AC is getting converted into DC, then this DC bus will get converted into AC. So in this session, in the first half, we are going to only cover this part, the AC directly into AC. And this part, this is a combination of AC to DC and then DC to AC. So in between, there will be a DC bus. Give me a few seconds. Okay, I think the drawings are gone, but let's continue. When it comes to the second type, what happens is there's AC to DC, then this is combined to a DC to AC. So we are going to talk about them separately. So we already have discussed about AC to DC. In today, we are going to cover this part. And in the first session, we are going to cover AC directly into AC part. Okay. So when it comes to actually, I posted the link. So I'm answering the question who has sent by Zoom user. I posted the link yesterday evening. So I saw some people have like logged into that. And also you guys have given the activity schedule, right? I think so. Okay. Okay, and we can continue and others can also, like, you have my number and we are all in the WhatsApp group. So you guys can ask questions if any of you have questions, please ask me later. So I know you guys will go through this session as a recorded video. There isn't an announcement on the EX5453. It was posted as a topic in the Moodle, not as an announcement. Usually, last time also it was like that, right? The day school 3, I posted it as a topic. If you can go and check there, you will see it. Okay, I didn't know that you guys are expecting to put it as announcements. Anyway, now it is fine. Now we have 7 participants. And anyway, this the what is it called? The activity schedule. It is given to you, right? Okay, I'll pause the recording here and we'll discuss this. Okay, so we were discussing about AC directly into AC. So that's what we are going to discuss in the first session. And in the second session, we are going to talk about DCU into AC. So you guys will have the knowledge on AC to DC and DC to AC. So then you guys will understand what happens in VFDs and all. So this is the thing happening in VFDs. But in this session, we are only going to cover about this. In the first half, we are only going to cover about DC, AC directly into AC. Okay. So when it comes to single phase AC to AC conversion, the circuit diagram is something like this. So in here you have this configuration is called two anti-parallel SCRs. So you know what SCRs is, right? It is thyristors. So this configuration is called anti-parallel SCRs. I'm sorry for my handwriting. And so what happens here is these are silicon control rectifiers. That means these are diodes, but these are controllable. So if you have uncontrollable diodes in this way, so let's forget about this circuit. Just consider this as a diode and this as a diode. So what will happen to the circuit? So if you know, you can put the answer in the chat also. So what happens is it will not give any effect to the circuit. So if it is a diode, let's consider about positive half cycle. The positive half cycle goes like this, and this diode will conduct and circuit will complete. When consider about negative half cycle, current will flow like this, and this diode will conduct and circuit will complete. So if these two components are ideal diodes, there will be no effect to the circuit. So in here, what we have done is we have replaced them with silicon controlled rectifiers or thyristors. So in here, if you give pulse to one thyristor when the S1, when the first cycle is continuing, it will start conducting after receiving the gate signal. So as same, if you give a gate signal to this thyristor 2, if the negative cycle is continuing, it will conduct the circuit. So what we can achieve here is we can control what goes to this side from this side. So we have the AC source here, we have the load here. So having this kind of configuration, what we do is we control what kind of signal or a waveform reaches to this side. So there are two main methods of control in this. The first one is called time proportional control, and the second one is called phase angle control. I'm sure you guys have heard about phase angle control in previous modules also. And when it comes to time proportional control, what we do is we directly cut half cycles. So if you consider about a AC waveform, is something like this, right? So if it is 50 hertz, there will be 50. This is the cycle time. There will be 50 cycles in a second, right? If it is 50 hertz. So in time proportional control, what we do is we cut these cycles. So usually half cycles, not full cycles, full half cycles. We call it full half cycles. So if you have something like this, when it comes to time proportional control, we stop conducting here and this part will be erased. So that's what time proportional control is. So it is something like PWM. You step the waveform for some time and then again it starts. It is basically PWM for AC. So that is what time proportional control means. Phase angle control means we are now not talking about cycles. What we do is we change the phase of the cycle. So we remove a portion of this first half cycle. Let's say we remove this part. Then for the other side, this part will go. And in the negative half cycle, we also remove a similar portion. So at the load, you will see a waveform like this. So that's what phase angle control means, because we are cutting the phase. In time proportional control, we are cutting cycles, actually half cycles. So if you know in one, if it is 50 hertz in one second, there will be 100 half cycles. So if we cut 50, the other side will only see 50 and the power dissipation of the other side will change. And one of the most important thing you should know is this AC to AC converters are used to change the output power. Usually to change the output power. So if you have dimmers in your house, so you know what dimmers are, right? So when you have lights, so you can adjust the light intensity. So if you have dimmers in your house, what happens is in there will be this phase angle control circuit, and it will cut cut your waveform in some way. So the other side will see not a sine wave. So the power output from the other side will change. So that's what happens in power angle control. Okay. Now we are going to talk more on this time proportional control. In time proportional control, as I explained earlier, there will be changes to the cycles. So what we do is we allow some half cycles to the other side. We cut some half cycles from the other side. So this is the simple, this diagram shows us simply how we do it. So in here you have your incoming wave. It will be something like this. So what we do is we give gate pulses as this. So there will be few cycles going to the load, and there will be some blank time. There are no pulses going to the other side, and then again there will be some pulses going to the other side. So this is called time proportional control. As I explained earlier, it is basically PWM for AC. And so this is very straightforward. We are going to discuss about the equations we use for analysis of this time proportional control. In time proportional control, in DC, the T on over T on plus T off, this is called duty cycle, and we directly get relationship between V out and duty cycle and V in. But when it comes to AC voltage controllers, it is not V, it is P. So maybe you remember in DC, if you can consider a buck converter, our voltage output is given by D into V in. D is T on over T on plus T off. But in here, it is not V, it is P. So you see usually the waveforms are cutting off. There are positive and negative half cycles, and this accounts for power in AC. An average output voltage we can easily take by taking how to calculate RMS value. And what we do is we calculate RMS value for a single cycle. Then we take how many cycles we have as on, how many total cycles. So that's how we take V out RMS. So this is a basic equation. You can no need to remember the derivation. You can just directly use it. And V out RMS will be equal to Vs RMS, means we supply RMS into M over M plus N. M is in here. M is on cycles. N is off cycles. So on plus M plus N is total cycles. I hope everybody has understood it. So that's how easy the TPC is, time proportional control. And we'll do a small example on this. So in the example, it says there's a circuit where this technique is applied. If thyristors are turned on for M25 half cycles of input voltage and turned off for N equals 75 half cycles. So that means, if you consider this as a 50 Hertz signal, that means there are 100 half cycles, and the TPM thyristors are keeping only quarter of them as on. So let's see how we can do this. The output RMS is calculated like this. Give me a second. Output voltage is calculated like this from the previous equation. And we have V out RMS, we supply RMS, and you know the equation we obtained earlier. And in here, our M is 25 cycles and M plus N is 100 cycles. So our let's do the I have included the calculation. So 25 over 100 is 5 over 10, right? Half into VSRMS is 220 volts, and this will be 110 volts. So then we are asked to calculate the IRMS. So if you have VRMS, it is very easy. IRMS will be given by VRMS over the load. So in here, the load is given as 22 ohms. That means it is purely resistive, and IRMS will be 200 in here. This is 110 volts over 22 ohms. So this will be 5 amperes. So very easy. Okay, then we are asked to calculate the output power. So there are two ways to calculate output power. So earlier we discussed about this equation, T on over T on plus T off into normal power. So in here, what we, as I explained earlier, these AC to AC converters are usually used to adjust the power output of a load. Okay, so we adjust the power output. So this is the adjusted power. So let's say you have a 100-watt bulb earlier. So now you, what you mean by dimming is you adjust the power output. So we need to make it 50 watts, 50 watt power light output. So T on over T on plus T off, we have to set as 0.5. So then you will get the light dimmed by 50% of it will only output 50 watts. So in here, we have two methods we can calculate the power output. So earlier, if you consider the normal power output of this circuit. So in here, the load is 22 ohms. So if it is directly connected to your 220 volt supply, it will, our power output will be 220 squared over 22. So this will come to, I think, 2200 watts, right? Is it? Yeah, I think so. Yes, 2200 watts. And this is the normal power if you have connected this load directly into your AC supply. But in here we have used this TPC technique. So then our output power will be changed. So from the early equation, we know M over M plus N into P normal. So earlier we have T on plus T on over T on plus T off. So T on is usually M into cycle time. Denominator will be also N into cycle times plus M into cycle times. You know, M is the number of half cycle. In here it is T over 2 because it is half cycle time. M is the number of half cycles. We have the circuit on, so half cycle time is T over 2. N is the half cycle time. How many half cycles we are keeping our circuit off. So the time we can calculate T over 2. And so then you know this T over 2 will cancel out. So again it will come to the same equation, M over N plus N. So that's how you calculate this power output. So after calculating it, you will get 550 watts, and you can easily also use that your basic formulas P equals VI. This is a resistive load single phase, so you can directly use this. And if you take V is 110 volts, I is 5 amperes, so 550 watts. I hope everybody has understood this. Okay. Now we are coming to somewhat advanced concept, the phase angle control. As I explained earlier, in here, we do not cut the circuit by cycle wise. So we cut it by phase wise. So if your V supply is something like this, you turn on these thyristors in between one cycle. In a manner, we can obtain something like this. So let's say you turn on this S1 at alpha angle. So up to alpha, the circuit will not conduct. So up to alpha, this circuit will not conduct. This will be 0 V up to alpha. So okay. So there will be 0 volts if your theta is less than alpha and 0. And after that, this will be Vs. So after alpha, and less than 5, this will be Vs. So this is how your positive half cycle will build up. So this is what I have indicated here. So after reaching the 0 voltage, this S1 will stop conducting. So then it will automatically turn off. So how transistors turn off when the voltage is getting negative, it will automatically turn off. So then there will be no voltage at the low. So now the negative half cycle is continuing. So we give the gate cycle for S2 at 5 plus alpha. So for this tristor, we trigger it at 5 plus alpha. So when 5 plus alpha is coming, the negative voltage is continuing. It will start going to the load will see that negative half cycle from 5 plus alpha angle. So up to 2 5 it will continue. Then again, so this will in here up to 2 5, this will be the sign voltage will be in this polarity. After reaching 2 5, this will become this polarity. So this will stop conducting. So that's how we obtain a voltage waveform like this at the output. So I hope everybody has understood it. So if you have any questions, you guys can ask it in the chat. I'm looking at the chat all the time. Okay. So do you guys have any questions so far? So this part is very easy actually. So upcoming parts are a bit hard. Do you have any questions? If you have, just put it or raise your hand, so I will get a notification if you raise your hand. Okay. Moving on. So this is the analysis of this phase angle control for R load. So I'm only going to talk about R load, and I have included sections for you to read. So then you guys will get the understanding, because as I said earlier, I am giving you a little push in here, so you will understand the basics. Then you can easily catch up with the material provided to you. In the material I meant the NPTEL document and the Daniel W. Hart Power Electronics. And today I am going to introduce you another book also, because some of the parts are not discussed very well in either of the documents. So today I'm going to expose you to a new document also. So I have included all the sections, so you guys can go on and read them and get the full understanding. That's how you should learn, because so this is the concept of Open University. You guys do the self-learning. I'm going to give you a small kick so you guys can go forward and catch up. Okay, so in here also this is very straightforward. So if you consider the this is the supply voltage actually, Vm sine omega t. So we are turning it on between alpha and plus pi, and then again alpha plus pi and below 2 5. So the instantaneous voltage we can easily write like this. So this circuit will only conduct up to starting from alpha to pi, then pi plus alpha to 2 5. So that's what we have mentioned here. So this one is Vm sine omega t. So that is the supply voltage, and this will be the output voltage. And this is the tristor voltage. So when our voltage is not going to the other side, the voltage will stay across the tristor. So that's why the tristor voltage is like this. So if you add this to this here, this will come to this if the tristors are ideal. So that's how you do it. And RMS voltage, it is also the basic formula 1/5, and we integrate this over a cycle. So in here this is alpha and this is the waveform. So that's what we are getting in the other side. So very basic equation. after doing this calculation, you will arrive at this. So try these calculations at home. So in here it is. So that's how you calculate the RMS voltage. So you can directly use these expressions in the examination. Otherwise, if I have asked you to prove it, you will have to prove. Otherwise, you can directly use this equation because these are standard equations. I think you guys have learned about these things in previous modules also. Can somebody put it in the chat? Have you guys learned about this phase angle control in some other module? Maybe electronic design or somewhere? Do you have some subject like that? Don't worry. So just put it to, if you are shy, put it into private to me, then answer the question. Just say yes or no. Have you guys learned about this phase angle control before this lesson? No. Okay. So nobody has heard about this, right? Did you understand what I said? Is it clear for you? Ravi sir, is it clear? Did you understand what is happening here? The phase angle control? I'm pretty sure you have understood TPC, right? Okay, then it is fine. So if you have understood, it is fine. Okay. So then moving on. So again, we have another equation, RMS current. So you know, if you have V out RMS, very easy to calculate the I out RMS, just divide it by R. So this is the same circuit, same equation. There's R here. So that's the only difference. So I hope everybody can see it. So this is V out RMS over R. So V out RMS, you know, I will write it here. VM alpha over 5 plus sine alpha divided by R. So R goes here. That's the equation. Very easy. I hope everybody understands this. Okay. So now we are coming to a little bit important part. So the now we know how to analyze a circuit. We have all the equations. So we know what is instantaneous voltage. So if you are asked to find instantaneous voltage at any point, you just have to use this equation. So this is very easy. So you know the output voltage will receive at these regions only between alpha and phi and alpha plus phi and 2 phi. So otherwise it is 0. So if you are asked to calculate instantaneous voltage, just do it so you know what to do. And now we are coming to the harmonic content. So you know when I think you have learned about these harmonics about in signals and systems or somewhere. So you know, when we are considering about a power system, there are harmonics. So the first is called fundamental. So that is the useful harmonic to us. It is not actually called a harmonic, it is the fundamental. Then we have second harmonics. Usually in three-phase and three-phase systems, the second harmonics is eliminated. And then we have the third harmonics. Third harmonic is the most important one. So if you have a neutral, there will be third harmonics in the neutral wire. Also, there will be higher effect in the neutral if you have third harmonics. So third harmonics, it is maybe power people, you know this. It is actually represented as a zero sequence current. So that's why it needs a neutral. And then so these are also called triplen harmonics. So the third harmonic is there, then the ninth likewise. So those harmonics are a little bit dangerous in a power system. So in this, don't worry about harmonics because we are not going to talk about these harmonics that much in this lecture. Just to your knowledge. There's a question. Let's see. This equation V out RMS was used in three-phase thristor uncontrolled rectifier to calculate the output. Is that correct? Three-phase. I'm not. No, I don't think so. Uncontrolled rectifiers, not possible, because uncontrolled rectifiers we don't have any alpha angle. If it is controlled rectifiers, maybe I'm actually not sure about the equation. Maybe I will let you know afterwards. Okay, in the group I will answer this question. I do not remember the equation for three-phase uncontrolled rectifier. I don't have it in my mind, so therefore I can't answer it. But uncontrolled rectifier, I'm sure it is not that equation. If it is controlled rectifier, there's a chance I will see. Okay. And harmonic content. So we don't like these harmonics in our power systems, because mainly because it will increase neutral current, and therefore neutral can get hot and it can get burned, or fires can start. Therefore we don't like these harmonics, and harmonics will also hurt motors, those sensitive equipments and electronic devices. These can cause a lot of harm. So therefore we don't like harmonics in our power system. And if you consider about the output of these PAC controllers, our these are actually voltage harmonics. So this is the amplitude. I think you guys remember about these things from your signal and systems lecture. So Cn is the amplitude of the harmonic component, and we have our we have curves representing it, and this is actually the degree angle. That means the gate firing. So alpha angle, this is alpha angle, and with alpha, so you can see how the voltage, output voltage differs. So this n equals 1, it is the fundamental. V out will differ like this. So you know, so you can go up to 180 up to pi. So at pi, the thyristors will not fire, so output voltage will be 0. At 0 angle, it will be basic AC voltage. So same voltage output and power output will be there. So if you take in between values, see when it comes to like somewhere around 120 degrees, this is where our fundamental is. It is something around, let's say, if this is the normalized voltage. Let's say we say 1.0 accounts for 100 volts. So since this is normalized, we have to get some notation like this. 1.0, let's say it is 100 volts. So if it is the supplied voltage is 100 volts, if your firing angle is 120 degrees, your output voltage will be somewhere around 30 volts. But when it comes to, if you check the third harmonic voltage, it will be also somewhere around 25 volts. This is very bad, because your fundamental is 30 volts and your third harmonic is 25 volts. So the harmonic content is very high. So we don't like this. Therefore, this PAC controllers are not very suitable for usage in modern power systems. In earlier, these things did not matter that much, but now we are very worried about our power quality. So therefore, PAC controllers, they inject a lot of harmonics into the power system. So not very suitable to use. And there's a small example. So these utilize these equations we discussed earlier. And so in here, let's do this. There's a single phase AC voltage controller. The input is 120 volts and the frequency is 60 hertz. The load resistance is 15. So this is ohms actually, 15 ohms. And we are asked to determine approximate delay angle required to deliver 500 watts to the load and RMS source current. So this is somewhat different. So earlier you remember in DC to DC converters, you are asked to find the duty cycle, find D to get for getting V out like that, right? So let's say you have 10 volts supply, you need to get 5 volts. So you are asked to find D. But in here, what we talk about is power. So we are asked to find the delay angle required to deliver 500 watts to the load. So in here, our load resistance is 15 ohms, and let's see how we are going to find it. So our power, we can easily calculate this power. This is a resistive load. We can easily calculate, even if it is not a resistive load, even if it is an impedance, you can also do this, but you will have to stick to complex numbers. So in here, this is very easy because I'm just going to give you a push to get the understanding. So P equals V out squared RMS over R. So our P we know R, we can find V out RMS. So V out RMS, it will come as 86.6 volts. So now we are asked to find the delay angle. So how we can do that? So we know the equation. So earlier equation, so this is the equation. So V out RMS, it is 86.6 now. We are asked to take V out RMS at 86.6. So we know VM, we know is 120. So other things we also know. But look at what we have in this section. We have alpha over pi plus sine 2 alpha over 2 phi. So this is actually very complex to solve. So we will have to go for numerical calculations. But in here, what we are going to do is we are not going to go for numerical calculations. What we are going to do is we are going to refer to the normalized output voltage curve. So this is a standard curve for every PAC controller. This will be the normalized output voltage. So in here we have found our normalized our output voltage. Now we have to find normalized output voltage. So normalized output voltage, it is very simple. Normalized output voltage is given by your output voltage, so the required output voltage, and your supply. So what we do is it is something like converting it to per unit. So our supply is 120 volts RMS. We are required to create 86.6 volts. So our normalized output voltage will be something like this, 0.7816. So we have our curve here. So what we are going to do is we are going to find where this 0.787216 is placed. So if you consider here, this is 72, so 7.82, this will be something like 0.7. So 7.8216 will be something here. So if we draw the line here, it will come to somewhere here, right? So then you check the angle from the below. So it will come, so this is 90. So this will come to somewhere around, let's say 87.5 or 88, right? So from approximately, we can say angle is close to 88 degrees. So that's how we find the approximate delay angle. But so this is approximate. So you don't know what is exactly the value. So what you do is you are going to try a trial and error method. So now you know you have found alpha is somewhere near 88 degrees. So you are going to apply this value to here and check at where we can get this exact voltage output. So you know we have to get 86.6 here, 120 is there. Then you are going to apply 1 minus. So if it is 88 here, so in here you have to apply it from radian. But my trick is you can easily calculate, convert this part into degrees, right? So this is a ratio between angles. So you have the angle from degrees here. So this is in radian. So what you can easily do is you can easily write this alpha over 5 as alpha over 180. So this will be 88 over 180 plus sine. You don't have to worry, you can apply from anything. Make sure your calculator is in the correct what is it called, the correct mode, radian or degrees. So if you apply this, you will match the value. So you can get trial and error calculation like 88.2 something, like you can put there and get the exact value. So in the examination, you don't need to do that. You can just put it, you can just draw the line and get the closest value. So that's how we are going to find out the angle for delay. Then we are asked to find RMS source current. So very easy. So you know, V out RMS we have found already 86.6, and R is there 15 ohms. So I out RMS will be 5.77 amps. So you are going to just divide this. So we have done it now. So that's how you are going to do a question on this phase angle control. So there are some other things you should know. You will have to read this section 5.2 in, this is in, I have not given the book, section 5.2 in Daniel W. Hart, Power Electronics. So this is the book. So read this and read everything. I know you guys are experts in reading, right? Self-learning. So read the sections, you will understand. Actually, in NPTEL document, there are the explanations are a little bit harder to understand. But Daniel W. Hart, it is very easy, and Richard's book also very easy. I'm going to introduce that book to you guys. Don't worry. Also refer to NPTEL ones also, but Daniel W. Hart book, it will give you a better explanation on things. So do these readings at home, okay? So I'm expecting you to do this. And now we are coming to three-phase power angle control. So we are only going to discuss about star configuration in this session. Actually, in the syllabus, there's delta configuration also, but the information given in NPTEL documents are also very low. So we are going to stick to three-phase PAC. So due to that, I am going to introduce this Rashid book. So in here, lot of details are there. Read it, but knowing basics is enough, because all the time you will have to work with basics. That's why people find this that if you don't know the basic, you find this subject very hard. Power electronics, you should know the basics. That's why I'm covering the basics for you guys, so then you guys can catch up, so you know what happens here, right? So that is the main purpose of doing this day schools. Okay, so three-phase PAC. So in three-phase PAC, we have designed these PACs, not we, the designers of this PAC. They have designed this considering the easiness of gate signaling. So what they have done is when two phases are conducting, other phase is kept closed. So very easy to analyze this circuit when it comes to, when it is like that. If all the phases are conducting simultaneously, this circuit will become very hard. So what we do is we keep one leg turned off all the time. If R and if AN and BN are powered up, this one is closed. How this one is closed? We are not giving, we are turning off all these tristors. So then this leg is turned off. So if BN and NC is conducting, AN is turned off. So then this circuit becomes very simple. So that's how we are going to derive equation for this. Actually, the derivation is not required for you guys. You can easily use the given equations. Actually, there are three equations. So you know, this is phase angle control. So there, for this method, we define three phase regions and equation. There will be three equations for those regions. So somewhat hard, but very easy. In the NPTEL document, the very small derivation is given. You can, very easy actually, you guys can try it out. I don't expect you to try to like derive at the final exams, but we'll see. I can ask them at TMS also. So there's another TMA coming. We will see what we can put there. Okay, so this is important. Gate pulses are provided in a way to obtain current flow through. Actually, this is two phases, not three phases. Two phases only. Two phases only. If AN and BN conduct, CN is off. So that's how we do it. Okay. So now, as I said, there are three regions. These are the regions. The first alpha is between 0 and 60, alpha is between 60 and 90, and alpha is between 90 and 150. So there are three regions and three equations. So we have these three equations. So depending on the alpha I have given, or you are going to find, the equation you are going to use will differ. So please remember that. Okay. So we'll see how the voltages are, how voltage waveforms are going to build up across these phases. So for this, we are going to use, we are only going to talk about phase voltages, and we'll see how these phase voltages are taken. So as I explained earlier, what we do is we keep only two phases conducting all the time. So if this phase is these two are conducting, this will turn off. So our triggering will be something like this. So let's say you fire T1 first. So you fire T1 first. So to energize these two phases, A and B, the AN and BN, you need to turn on T6. So this is the first sequence. So then let's say you need to fire, then you need to power up AN and AC. So then your second sequence will be T1, and this will be T1 and goes there and comes here, T2, right? I'm correct, right? So this is going here. Coming here, yes. So now you have turned on this phase with these two phases. Then let's say you need to turn on T3. T3 to get the T3, then you need to turn on BN and AN. So T3, then T4. Then you can turn on, if we have turned on T3, then next one is T3 and T2, right? T3, yes, T3, T2. So likewise, you can develop the gate pulses, how this the what is it called, the arrangement of the thyristor firing by looking at this circuit. So I will so we'll consider one section here. So let's say our T1 and T6 are firing. So that means this one is conducting and this one is conducting. So our circuit diagram will be something like this. So you have source here, and your voltages will build up. across here. See, so this is T1 conducting to this way, and using T6, the circuit is completed. So these are the phases. So this one is VAN, this one is VBN, and this is V capital AN, this is V capital BN. So if you consider this circuit, so you know the voltage between these 2 points, it is VAB. I hope everybody understands. So this is the line voltage. So the notation I used here is a little bit wrong, but so you can also take this as, because this is neutral, this is B, this is A, this is neutral. So VAN is correct. So this one will be VNB, but we usually don't write it like that. So the voltage across these 2 points will be VAB. So VAB, so the VAB will come apply across these 2 resistors. So these 2 resistors are same. VAB will be applied across these 2 resistors. So we can easily use the resistive divider method to calculate what is the phase voltage. So if the circuit is something like this, this is VAB, this is R, and this is this point, our phase voltage will be VAB over 2. In here also VAB over 2. So that's how our voltage waveforms will build across these phases. You can do the same for these 2 phases also. So that's what we have done here. So this is alpha equals 60. So in here the firing is given for alpha equals 60. So this angle is 60 degrees. So it goes up to 580. So it start from here. So first I wrote it down as T1, T6, but this is also same. It is start 1 and 6. Then in here 1 and 6 is kept on for this. Actually, this you should understand very well. So our in 3-phase PAC, we say our firing angle is this firing configuration is, because see you will see 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4 5 is here and 6 is here, because this is a little bit harder to understand, but go home and write like do some exercises, you will understand. So when it comes to practicals, you know, when it comes not practicals, when we are doing this practically, you fire tristors in this order, so it will automatically generate these outputs. So that's what you should understand. So earlier I said our output voltage will be VAB over 2. See, so this is the VAN. So VAN, this is VAN equals VAB over 2. So that's what we have given here. So in here our tristor 1 and 6 has fired. In here also it is tristor 1 and 6. So the angle, no, in here it is not tristor 1 and 6. It is 1 and 2. The angle that you keep your tristors firing is determined by this alpha angle. So these are the configurations. So for alpha equals 9, alpha equals 120, there's another configuration. So in there, some of these firing locations will be empty. So this is actually only for your knowledge. I'm not going to test this at your exam. I think in NPTEL document also there's some error in the document, because they have given alpha equals 60, but they have marked it as alpha equals 90. So don't get confused with NPTEL document. Refer to this Rashid Power Electronic Devices and Circuits and Applications books, you will understand. So please read it. So I hope everybody will understand how this VAB over 2 comes here. It is because when you complete the circuit, it will be something like this. So this is neutral from there. This is neutral from load side. This is neutral from source side. And A and B. And in here A, N, B. So VAN will be equal to, so the total voltage across this will be VAB. VAN is 0.5 VAB. And VBN is same 0.5 VAB. So that's why we are getting these angles here. So don't worry about it. If you don't understand, please read. Not if you don't understand, please read this book compulsorily. Okay, read this book, you will understand. This is very hard for you to understand, I know, because the circuit is very complex. Don't worry, you will in the examination, what I will ask you to do is you will have to get the equations from the given equations, because those are standard equations, and you can apply values to it and get the answers. So these are the standard equations. You can directly use these equations and get the answer. So only thing you have to be very careful about is alpha angle. So you have to check your angle is in which region. So if it is less than 60 and in between 0 and 60, you are going to use this equation. If it is 60 and 90, you're going to use this equation. And if it is between 90 and 150, you are going to use this equation. So so in here the 180 is not given, mainly because we do not use these circuits in that region. Okay, so don't worry about this part. If you don't understand it, read the book, you will understand. So only book you can find a good explanation on this PAC for 3-phase is this book. So they the other book, what is Daniel W. Hart, he does not offer very good explanation on this. NPTEL is also does not offer very good explanation, and there are some errors also. As I explained earlier, they have drawn this angle 60 firing diagram, but they have mentioned it actually drawn it in the 90 degree position, but they have taken the answer, the final answer correctly. So if you are referring to NPTEL and Daniel W. Hart, there's no error. The only thing is the explanation is not enough. NPTEL, there are some errors, so please be careful about when you are referring to these drawings. Okay, so we have talked about these things. Okay, so I have included things to you to read at home, because we can't cover everything in this session. Now it is almost 11:42. We have to cover DC to DC very fastly. So read this at home. The only what you need is given here, and reading more is also recommended. These are the most important things you should read. Okay, now we are coming to DC to AC converters or inverters. So you guys may heard about these inverters. So when you need to convert DC voltages into AC, you are going to buy an inverter and put it there, right? So maybe you have done some projects using car batteries and powering up your home using them. So using an inverter. So very fun projects. Maybe you have done these things. So now we are going to learn how these inverters work. Okay. So this is the most basic kind of inverter, the square wave inverter. So this is not sinusoidal. So AC does not mean sinusoidal. AC does not mean sinusoidal. It can be alternating. So this is alternating. See, VDC minus VDC, again VDC minus VDC. So if it is alternating, it is AC. Okay. So it does not have to be sinusoidal, but when it comes to some loads, not resistive ones, some loads, the only useful waveforms will be sinusoidal waveforms, which is the fundamental. So fundamental sinusoidal will be useful waveforms when it comes to some load. So therefore, when you have a square wave at their input terminals, there will be a lot of harmonics getting into those devices, and it will degrade those devices, especially fans and those inductive loads. So they can't handle these this sine wave, not square wave pulses. And so very easy, what happens here is, so this is a H bridge. I think you guys have heard about H bridges, right? When you do project in first year, or I think you guys do robotics projects in first and second years. So H bridge, what it usually, what we use H bridge is for motor controlling. So if it is a motor, if you need to drive this motor in both direction, bidirectionally, you use a H bridge. So when you have let's say you in H bridge, there can be 4 configurations. So if you have S1 and S2 on, the voltage will, the VDC will apply here and 0 will apply here. So this is the load. So this one is the load. So load will be exposed to a positive voltage. Okay. So if you turn on S3 and S4, so voltage will come from here. So it is minus now. So this point will be minus, and this point will be positive. So our polarity has changed now. So now VDC is applied. So this is positive and this is negative. So that's how square wave inverter works. So what we do is we do it very fastly. So if you need 50 hertz signal, what we do is we define our cycle time. So this is if it is 50 hertz, this will be 20 milliseconds. So you switch it in this way to obtain this. So you give gate pulses, usually done by some control circuit. We are not going to talk about control circuits in this section. If you need, I will put a document up there in the Moodle to you to read. Okay. And so that is the basic concept of square wave inverter. So square wave inverter VRMS is equal to VDC. So you know RMS meaning, RMS is actually the DC representation of a waveform. So when it comes to square wave inverter, it is already DC. See, so this part is DC, direct current. So the voltage is not changing for a time period. So this our VRMS will be equal to VDC. So this is one of the things you should know when it comes to square wave inverters. And I have, so since I thought there will be the time will be not enough for this, therefore I have included some homework for you guys. So you need to read section 8.3. So this is Daniel W. Hart book, and section 8.1 to get the understanding about RL load. So we are going to talk about R load. R load is very easy actually, nothing like I out is VRMS over R. When it comes to RL load, this will change. So very good explanation is given in Daniel W. Hart Power Electronics book. So please read it, very easy. I know you guys know what happens when you have a R load. So your currents will not get changed instantaneously. So you know inductors can't have instantaneous current changes. We discussed that in the DC to DC converters lecture in the last day school. So same thing is happening here. There will be time constants and all. Get the understanding. So you know how this square wave inverter works. So you will, this is enough for you guys to get the push to understand other things. And now we are going to do a Fourier analysis. We are not going to do a Fourier analysis. We just have the equations. So you know, in so as I talked earlier, this inverter will output square waves, so not sinusoidal. So we have to find the sinusoidal component included in those sine waves. So I think you all know how square pulse is made up, because I think you guys learn these things in signal and systems. I think there's a lecture module like that in this curriculum. So you know a lot of odd sine waves are adding. Then so the addition will create something like this. So that's how this sine, the square waveforms are built up. So what we are going to do is we are going to find the fundamental component of this, then how much harmonics we have in this waveform. So that those things we are going to discuss in this session, not very thoroughly, just for your understanding. So this is the Fourier representation of a square wave. So this is a square wave. So you know the square wave pulse is coming out as the waveform of the inverter. So we are going to use the square wave, the Fourier representation of a square wave to analyze this. So you know now, I hope everybody can understand this. So this is given as, so you know V out. This will mean something like this: 4VDC over pi sine omega t. So this will be the fundamental, and then there will be only, this is only odd harmonics, 4VDC and 3 pi sine 3 omega t plus. So you know how to expand this, right? I hope everybody knows how to expand this. So this is the fundamental, this is the useful one, the others are harmonics. So what we are going to see, how much concentration is there on this waveform, how much is there on this waveform, we can easily find. And actually we don't need the each and every one, we only need the fundamental and others all together. So that's all you should know. So then IN means the current harmonics. So the first fundamental will be I1. So we can take V1 Z1. So Z actually in here, if it is resistive, Z will not change. But if you have something like some load like R plus J omega L, so the omega will change depending on this M. Okay. So this is N omega actually. So for your harmonics, so you know what are harmonics, right? 50 hertz is fundamental first. Then this is, we are only talking about odd harmonics here, 150 hertz third, and let's say fifth is 250 hertz. So likewise, this N number will change and omega will change with the harmonics, and the impedance will change if you have RL load. So that part you should know. And I have given it here. See, so N omega 0 L square root. So this is the impedance. So you can find any harmonic current and the fundamental using this equation. Then when it comes to power, same equation. So if you need to find fundamental, P1 will be equals I1 RMS squared into R. So in here, see, this is actually max. So this one will give you max or instantaneous here, actually max. So if you are working with these numbers, you have to divide this value by √2 to get the RMS. Okay. So you understand why we are getting max here, right? So Vn will be the maximum voltage. So that's why we are getting max here. Okay, so we have a small example. Listen to this lecture again and try do this at home. You will get the understanding. So in this example, we have VDC equals 100 volts, R equals 10 ohms, L equals 25 millihenry, F equals 60 hertz. Then we are asked to determine the amplitudes of the Fourier series terms for square wave load voltage and amplitude of the Fourier series terms for load current and power absorbed by the load. So same equation we used earlier. So so in here, what we are going to do is we have we are asked to find the amplitudes only. So we are going to ignore this sign part, because this part is only for representing the instantaneous value. So sign, when you have represented something like this, it will, it is rotating, right? So that is why that is what this sine omega t is there for. But we are only asked about amplitude, so we are going to find this component only. So in here we have Vn. So we are asked to find all the Fourier series terms, but we are not going to find all because it will go to infinity. We are going to find few. So first, Vn equals 4 VDC over N5. So we can, so we have given the values are in here, a little bit wrong. VDC is 4, so change it to 400 volts. So VDC is 400 volts for VDC over N5, and IN, each component you can find. So Vn, the same thing. So if it is 1, so we have applied. So this is applied from 1 getting here, and our load 10 plus L 25 millihenry. So this is J omega L, and we are putting an N here to compensate for harmonics. So that's how we find impedance, and IN is there. So that is the expression for current and power, same equation we discussed earlier. So after doing calculation, so for the V1 will be 400 into 4 into 5. So this one actually I think this is correct. So don't change this to the answer here is wrong. This should be changed to 100. So this should be 100. So 100 into 400. We can erase this. 400 over 5. It will be somewhere around 127, because 5 equals 3.14. So 127 volts. Okay. So I hope everybody can do this at your home, right? You can find everything. So these are variables. So now there's R plus RL load. The L will the reactive impedance will change with omega. This will depend on omega. That's why we are finding the impedance also. So the rest of the parts are very easy. And when you have all the components, we have found up to 9, because these are only odd. So we have found 5 components. We can add them up to get the power. Only for power we are adding them up. For voltages, we are keep voltages, and current we can't add. For power we can add. Okay. So that's all you should know. And total harmonic distortion, as I said earlier, this is square pulse. So there will be harmonics in the system, and harmonics. So have you guys learned about total harmonic distortion? Can somebody say yes or no? Total harmonic THD value. Have you guys learned? Just put yes or no. If you don't know, put no. That's fine. No. Okay. So total harmonic distortion, it is defined as the total harmonic content. Harmonic content means, you remember, there are waveforms. So these are harmonic. So this is the only thing we need. This is fundamental. So this is fundamental. These all are harmonics. Okay. So the harmonic content. So harmonic content means these ones, and there will be more because of harmony. So when you are going higher and higher, see current is getting lower and lower. So we can ignore after some level. So just for this example, we can only count these four. Okay. So THD, total harmonic content over fundamental. So total harmonic content for voltage, we can find this, find it like this. So this is Vn RMS squared, and that's how you add them. So this is basically, so in here it is starting from 2. So that means fundamental is not there. Please remember that we are not taking fundamental as the total harmonic for the total harmonic voltage available. So this will start from V3 RMS, V5, V7 plus V9. So that's how you find harmonic content, voltage harmonic content. Then we take the ratio of it to fundamental. So this is the fundamental. Okay. So in here, so you know, so the expansion of this is this. So so this part will be the expansion of it. So so you can go on like this. So, but we can easily get something here. So this will go on like this, V11 squared. Okay, this will go on. But if you observe this correctly, what you can do is, so you know what is VRMS, right? VRMS square will be given by V1 square, V2 square, V3 square, V4 square, likewise. So in here we don't have V4, V2, V4, and the only odd harmonics will be there. So this will add up to VDC. Okay, VDC square actually. This will add up to VDC. So this is a normal thing when it comes to RMS. Okay, all we are considering all the components there. So adding them up will add up to VDC, VRMS. So in this case, since this is square wave, this will be equal to VDC. So we can, so only thing we do not have here is this component. So these are already not there because these are odd components. Odd components are not there. So V5, V7 is there. So odd components we can, odd components are there, even components, they will not be there. So what we do is we have VRMS square, then the only thing we have here, so since we have V1 is odd, so we have to include V1 here into the VRMS of a square wave. So we remove V1 from this expression. So then you will end up with this part. So that's how we come across this equation. So V squared RMS minus V1 RMS total square root over V1 RMS. So this one will give total harmonic content, and this is the fundamental. So same thing can be done to this. Okay, in here you don't add the current like this. You if it is given, so when it comes to current, you can only calculate this if currents are given. Okay, so you read these slides, you will understand. So for voltage, we can easily do this, and for square wave inverter, THD is a constant because we know VRMS, it is VDC, V1 RMS, it depends on VRMS, and VRMS also is constant for same inverter. And using this expression, you can calculate the THD value to be 48.3 for square wave inverter. So this is a constant. For THDI, it is not a constant. It can be calculated if IRMS given or can be approximated by finding current harmonic components like this. Okay. If IRMS is given, you can easily get IRMS square minus I1, then I1. Okay, if given THDI. So usually if this one is not given, what you can do is you have I1 here. These are the other components. What you do is you just approximate. So THDI I3 square plus I5 square plus I7 square plus I9 square over I1. So that's how you approximate. So this answer will not be correct as this answer. If IRMS is given, you can get the accurate answer. So this one is very accurate. If you only have these components, you can approximate. So this one is approximation. Okay, that's how you calculate THD for square wave inverter. So all of these content is obtained from so reference is Daniel W. Hart. Okay, so refer to this book if you don't if you don't understand anything. Okay, refer to this book. You will easily understand. And go home and try example 8.3 on Daniel WD Power Electronics. Okay, now we are coming to one of the most important sections of the inverters. These are called multi-level inverters. So multi-level inverters, what we do is, so we have one square pulse inverter here. So this one will create something like this. So when it comes to multi-level inverters, what we do is we put them in series. So if you have two square pulse inverters, so H bridges, what you do is you connect one output to another in series. So those two will act as series sources. So by doing this, what you can do is, so let's say one is creating a waveform like this, and other one is creating a waveform like this. So if these two are in series, what you will get is something like this. So this is not a square pulse, but it is also something like a step, but it is much more like a sine wave, right? So square pulse, it is not like a sine wave. So it is not even close to a sine wave. But when it comes to something like this, it is somewhat like a sine wave. So harmonic content of a multi-level inverter will be lower. Somewhat, so it is important. These are somewhat like sine waves. Did you understand this? So multi-level inverters means you put several H bridges in series. So these will have separate DC sources. See, VDC, VDC, VDC. So V1, V2, V3, you can put any number of inverters in series. Then the lowest one will create a waveform like this. The second one will create a waveform like this. The third one will create a waveform like this, because since these are adding, because these are put in series. And fourth one will put a waveform like this. So your average will be something like a sine wave. So that's what we do in multi-level inverters. Okay. So that's what I have explained here. So you put these two in series. So what we have done here is, so this is actually, let's say this is neutral. So this is V1, and this one. So since this is connected here, this will be also V1. So this is V2. So V2 will be this gap is actually V2. So the output comes here will be V1 plus V2. Okay, I hope everybody can understand. Okay, so this part is V2. Ignore this one. So multi-level means you have several inverters in series. Okay, that's the definition of it. So in here, so this is the waveform generated by this inverter. So this inverter will generate V2, it is something like this, and this inverter will generate V1. So it is something like this. So since these are in series, this will get adds up. So you add this to this and it will get something like this, and this is something like a sine wave. So that's how we that's what a multi-level inverter is. So if you have two inverters in series, you can have 5 levels of voltages. So in here you can see this is 2 VDC. Since this is also VDC, this is also VDC. Since if this is 0 and this one is producing VDC and this one is also producing VDC, the maximum voltage will be VDC. Then you can have 1 VDC. So this is 0, this is VDC, and it will create 1 DC, 1 VDC. And this if both are 0, it is 0. If one is producing minus VDC, this will be minus VDC, and both are producing minus VDC. This is 2 minus VDC, minus 2 VDC. So if you have two inverters, you can have 5 levels of voltages: 2 VDC, VDC 0, minus VDC, minus 2 VDC. So if you 5 level inverter, so another way of saying that is 5 level inverter will have 2 inverters in series or 2 H bridges in series. Okay, did you understand this? And okay, somebody, so if you have understand this, somebody say, so if you have 2 inverters, you can have these 5 voltage levels. If you have 3, what happens if you have 3? How many voltage levels you can have? Can somebody answer in the chat? If you have 2 inverters, you can have 2 VDC, VDC 0, minus VDC, minus 2 VDC. So altogether it is 5. If you have 3, the top one will be 3 VDC. So it will something like this. So this will be 3 VDC. This is 2 VDC. So 3 VDC will be generated if all the 3 inverters are generating VDC. If it is 2 VDC, that means only 2 will be generating VDC voltage. And if only one is generating voltage, it is VDC. So you have 3 here and you have 0. Then in the other side, you have these 3 again. So if you have 3 inverters, you can have 7 levels. So this is given by 2K plus 1 for levels. How many levels? K is number of H bridges. Okay, I hope everybody has understood this now. Okay, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Okay, this is very important. Okay. Move on to the next. Okay, so now we are going to do Fourier analysis on these multi-level inverters. So in multi-level inverters, what we get is so you remember in single level that or the square pulse inverters, your output voltage is represented using 4 VDC over n pi sine omega t, sine n omega t. So that's how your the Fourier representation of a square pulse inverter is given. So in here, this is the only difference is the pulses are not square. So these are square, but these are triggered in some angle. So alpha 1, alpha 2, likewise. So these are triggered in some angle. So to add these to this expression, this new term comes. So you don't need to understand how this one comes. Just remember, this is the representation of a multi-level inverter. So in here, this is for two levels. So if you have many levels, so if you have 3 levels, the alpha will be, there will be alpha 3. If you have 4 levels, there will be alpha 4. So you will get a series of cost terms. So what happens is, let's say for a 3-level inverter, what will you is cos n alpha 1 cos n alpha 2 plus cos n alpha 3. So that's how you can represent it for a multi-level inverter with 3 H bridges, because each H bridge will have a alpha angle for triggering. So in here, the first H bridge will trigger at alpha 1 all the time. So in here, it is 5 plus alpha 1. In it's the second inverter will trigger at alpha 2. If you have third inverter, this will trigger at alpha 3. So that's what is represented in that Fourier transformation. So in your level, you don't need to understand how this equation comes. You can even, like, Fourier series is covered in another section. We are not going to do how, we are not going to understand how we are going to get this equation in this session. Okay. So this is the only thing changing here. And IN, you can find it as same as earlier, Vn over impedance. P, it is same as earlier for this square pulse inverter. You can use same equations here because the Vn is the only thing changing. So impedance will change depending on the frequency, but it does not change depending on the circuit. And IN, so if this one does not change, this one will also not change. So then we have something called modulation index. So the modulation index is like something you can some index you can take to compare this your multi-level inverter to a square wave inverter. So what we do is we take amplitude of fundamental of the multi-level inverter and take the ratio of amplitude of square wave with the max DC voltage. That means this is the amplitude of square wave in the fundamental amplitude of a square wave inverter. So what we do is we this is actually comparing your multi-level inverter with the square wave inverter. So if you have a good modulation index, it is better. So in here, amplitude of fundamental of the multi-level inverter, and you can also this denominator can be expressed from other words also. So in here I have included amplitude of a square wave with max DC voltage. So max DC voltage here is V6 in this case. Okay, so the main idea is you are comparing fundamental amplitude of a multi-level inverter. So we know how to find the multi-level inverter amplitude, and we are taking the same DC bus, but in here it is the combination of all DC sources because we have to take the peak voltage. So what we do is, so we have, if we have V6 like this, so if you have V6 voltage, so this is a This is the square wave inverter output if you give V6 to that square wave inverter. So we are taking the fundamental of this this waveform and compare it with the fundamental of our multi-level inverter waveform. So that's what we do in modulation index. So we'll do an example. So please refer to Daniel W. Hart books if you don't understand this. I know this part is very complex. Okay. So let's calculate modulation index of a two-source multi-level inverter or two H bridges. So in here, as I explained earlier, amplitude of the fundamental of a multi-level inverter and amplitude of a square wave with max DC voltage. So max DC voltage V6. So in here, so I have given the multi-level inverter which is having VDC sources. So the total max voltage will be 2 VDC. So 2 VDC is the peak point. So you may remember. So this inverter will have the output will be something like this. So this will be 2 VDC. That is the maximum voltage. So we are also having a inverter with that DC voltage, square wave inverter. So we are taking the fundamental amplitude of this inverter. So it will give to us using this expression. But in here the VDC is 2 VDC because we have to consider the peak voltage of this inverter. So 2 VDC, we are putting it here V1 over 5. So that is the fundamental of square wave inverter with the max DC link. And then we are taking the fundamental of this multi-level inverter. So it is given by this. So you remember earlier we had this equation. So amplitude is when you're getting the amplitude, you are not going to consider this sine part. So amplitude will be given by 4 VDC over 5 over n and cos n alpha 1 plus cos n alpha 2 if it is a two source inverter. So in here we have taken that expression and for VDC over n5 we have that expression, amplitude expression. So this is only the amplitude. Okay, don't get confused. And V1 for VDC over 5 cos alpha 1 plus cos alpha 2. So since n is 1, 1, 1, this will be the fundamental amplitude of a multi-level inverter. And then we can easily calculate the modulation index. We are taking the ratio of this to this. So these two terms are same, right? Not same. We have a lot of things that get cancelled out. VDC cancelled out, 5 cancelled out, VDC cancelled out, 4 cancelled out. Okay. So modulation index, it will come as cos alpha 1 plus cos alpha 2 over 2. So this is for two source inverter. This will be this will continue as a series. So if it is 3 sources, so this is for 2 sources, this will be cos alpha 1 plus cos alpha 2 plus cos alpha 3 over 3. Likewise, so it will go, so for 5 inverters, if you have 5 inverters, cos alpha 1, it will go up to cos alpha 5 over 5. So there are some easy ways to remember these things. Okay, modulation index you can easily calculate from this this expression. Okay. So we have only 7 minutes left. I'm going very fast. So do these examples at your home. So read related sections also. So these are from Daniel W. Hart, Power Electronics. So now we are coming to PWM inverters. So these are the most common inverters where we have in the industry. So VFDs, they work in this principle. In multi-level inverters, if you have many levels of H bridges, you can also match you can approximate a sine wave by having a lot of steps, so you can uh, match the shape of a sine wave. But the only but we do that is very bulky, right? So when you have many levels of inverters, so lot of hardware components and several DC buses, so very bulky. Multi-level inverters you can match. You can match a sine wave, but we can easily do this if we change a modulation technique. So if you like if you introduce PWM into our usual circuit, we can do it from a single H bridge. So those are called PWM inverters. So what we do is, so you remember earlier we switched them very slowly. Our switching frequency is very slow. So we have, if you take a sine wave inverter, we only switch one for a cycle. So if you take multi-level inverters, you switch mostly, like if it is 5 level, how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 7. Use 7 times for the cycle. But when it comes to PWM, we switch it in very high frequencies. What you do is you need to create a sine wave, right? So you need to create a sine wave. So what you do is you divide this area into very small sections, and you apply PWMs in each section. So if you apply, I will take this to explain. So if you take this section, see, this is the T total and this is T on. So your average will be something like this. If you take this region, your average will be something like this. If you take this region, it will be something like this. So likewise, you can obtain the same voltage waveform you obtained in the previous multi-level inverters using these PWM inverters. So what you do is we have a reference voltage. What we do is we define a special switching mechanism. So this is a little bit confusing and complicated. So what you do is you have a reference signal and you have a carrier wave. So carrier wave is therefore determining your gate pulses. So what you do is, so in here I will explain in the next slide. So these points are a little bit important. So this still uses the H bridge inverter, and switching is more sophisticated. As I said earlier, there's a reference and a carrier signal, and switching can be done unipolar or bipolar. So let's consider about bipolar switching. So what bipolar switching means, so this is the reference. Yeah, it is given. So this is the reference and this is the carrier. So if your reference is higher than the carrier, you switch on VDC, H bridge, as you configure your H bridge. So you have your H bridge like this. If your reference is higher than your carrier, you configure your H bridge to give positive VDC. So that's what we have done here. See, our carrier, our carrier is like this and your reference is like this. So it is higher in this portion. V sine is higher than Vref. So we are turning it on as VDC. So, but when you consider here, in this two small section, your reference is higher than V sine. So we turn on minus VDC. So you configure your inverter to give minus VDC in cases like this. So that's how you achieve the switching characteristics. So this is actually done using a microcontroller, and the theory is very simple. You have two reference signals. These are inside the microcontroller, so you don't see them. You in a DSP controller, there will be this sine wave generating and your triangular wave generating. So they are comparing these two, and according to the values of this triangular waveform and sine waveform, they are putting away these gate pulses. So gate pulses, as you obtain VDC and minus VDC as here. So in here, that is what happened. So this is the logic. If sine is, if your reference is larger than carrier, you turn on S1 and S2, S1 and S2, S1 is here, S2 is here. So this will be VDC. If your sine is less than V triangle, you turn on S3 and S4. This will be minus VDC. So that's how this bipolar switching works. So at the end of the day, you will have a sine wave, something like this. So in here, there will be the peak. I think this will be the minus point. So it is a little bit harder to imagine. So the average will be something like this. Okay, that's how you create a sine wave. So this is obviously not a sine wave. Obviously not get a smooth sine wave like this. So there will be, you remember, multi levels and but it somewhat close to a sine wave. It will be somewhat close to a sine wave. So that's how bipolar switching works. So then you have unipolar switching. Unipolar switching, it is you don't switch it to negative directly. So in here, so you know, you in this configuration, you can have VDC and minus VDC. So what we do here is this is unipolar switching. So our voltage output is taken from VA minus VB. So the switching characteristics are a little bit different. So we have two references here, V sine and V negative sine. So this is the first reference, ref 1, and this is ref 2. So your switching conditions will differ by a bit, and you will finally achieve something like this. So in here, if you consider, so this is VDC, this is VDC. So in here, our voltage will be 0 through this portion. Our voltage will be 0 because we are taking VA minus VB. So this is 0. But in here, this one remains, but this one drops. So our voltage will be something like this. See, we are taking VA minus VB. So at this point, this goes to 0, but this still stays like that. So it will be VA. So our voltage waveform will be something like this. So likewise, so you can imagine how the differences of these things. This will also obtain a sine wave like this. That's what unipolar switching means. So please, now it is almost, our time has passed now. Especially read these sections in Daniel W. Hart and NPTEL documents, and do the example 8.9 in Daniel W. Hart. So you will understand this unipolar switching and bipolar switching. The Daniel W. Hart, the explanations are very easy. So go through it, you will understand. Since you guys are very comfortable with reading, I hope everybody will be able to understand this. Okay, so that's it. So our time is also passed. So if you, I will stop the recording now. If you have any questions, you can ask now.